All right, today we are going to be talking about contract timelines, fun stuff, making sure you stay out of trouble, making sure you stay out of hot water with your clients, the other realtor, all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to kind of start in not necessarily contract order, but chronological order. So there's a few things that are kind of out of, you'll notice I jumped from page one to a different page. So we're going to go kind of chronological from the time you go under contract to what happens actually in practice. So we're going to look at the purchase contract, the finance addendum. There are timelines inside the finance addendum that we need to be aware of. And then contingency timelines. There are timelines inside the contingency as well that you need to be aware of if you're ever doing contingency contracts as a seller or a buyer. Okay, so there are, okay, well, let's start going through this. So first thing, first kind of timeline that pops up when you're writing an offer, most of these are timelines that buyers have to abide by. They are, the buyer is the one who does the inspections, the appraisals, all the stuff throughout the process. So most of the time, these are things timelines buyers have to meet. And then there are a few things that buyers have to allow in the timelines as well for the seller to complete. So a lot of the times, monitoring the timelines is going to be on the buyer agent's duties. Most of the time, seller agents have to monitor it, but most of that's on the buy side. So the first timeline that will pop up is the termination of the offer. So right above, even though it's on the last page of the contract, we're going to talk about it first. So first timeline that pops up in the contract process is the termination of the offer. There's no standard. I would say the closest thing to a standard is 24 hours. Or 5 o'clock the next day is kind of what most people do. Gives them a day to get through with it. The thing with termination timelines, this is on the last page, it's the last paragraph before signatures, and it's when the offer becomes invalid. Seller has to either counter or sign this contract before this time expires. Problem is, this has zero teeth. It means nothing. Unless your buyer is willing to walk away and not buy the house anymore, that timeline means nothing. The seller can take as long as they want. And if your buyer wants the house, they just along for the ride. That's the frustrating part. So I've seen buyer agents be real aggressive and put like 4 hours on here. I've seen them put that evening at 5 o'clock, 10 p.m. that night, something like that, and that's silly. And if I'm the seller agent, if I'm the listing agent and I receive that, I'll say, I noticed your expiration timeline. I'm going to do everything I can to achieve that, but I doubt I'll be able to have the seller make a decision by then. So I'm going to try real hard, but it's probably not going to happen. And then they're going to be like, whatever. But let them affirm that it's on there and affirm you're going to try, but then give your seller 24 hours. That's a reasonable response time. Especially if people are working, husband and wife are at work all day, whatever, they don't even have time to talk about it for 5 more hours, so 24 hours is normal. So I normally just do it the next day at 5 p.m. That's just kind of my normal thing based on whatever time it is. I just give them a 24 hour till end of day tomorrow is normally when I give them. But there's no right or wrong way to do that. But understand that there's almost no teeth in this. Be respectful of what the buyer requests, but understand that the buyer has to walk away for this to be really enforceable. And most buyers don't write an offer on our house they're okay walking away from, normally. Earnest money. So this is kind of a big one. We've had a couple of random incidences in the last couple of months with earnest money. So all the timelines inside the contract are calendar days. Everyone understand the difference between a calendar day and a business day? Business day doesn't count weekends or holidays. Calendar days is every day. So 3 days is 3 days from now. And if today's Friday, it's not Friday, Monday, Tuesday, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? 3 days. So whenever you go under contract, you have 3 days from the contract is fully executed by all parties to deposit X dollars of earnest money to X title company or brokerage, wherever the trust account is. Golly, my brain's not working right now. So 2 things to know here. One, if day 3 falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday, it extends to the next day. So if day 3 is a Sunday, you have till Monday to deliver it. If day 3 is Martin Luther King Day, you have till the day after if it's Thanksgiving or whatever holiday, you have to the day after. So you get an extra day. You don't have to get it in the day before. You have an extra day to get it. So that's the first thing to know. It's 3 calendar days, and if it falls on a weekend or a holiday, you have the next available day. So if it falls on Saturday, you have 2 more days till Monday. Does that make sense? You have 3 days to provide it. So here's one. If the buyer fails to deliver earnest money, has anyone not gotten earnest money in 3 days before? Very frustrating process, especially if the buyer agent is not communicating, like what's happening, where is it, why haven't you got it? A lot of listing agents just assume it gets done. As a listing agent, I've had agents in the company just go 2 or 3 weeks negotiating the contract, moving forward, assuming the earnest money is turned in. It was never turned in. Now they're still liable to lose that earnest money, but it makes it really, really hard to collect if it's not somewhere already. So if the buyer fails to deliver the earnest money within the required time, seller may terminate the contract and exercise their remedies under paragraph 16. That means the buyer is in breach of one of the terms of the contract. So they can pursue earnest money at that point. Since there is no earnest money turned in, it's a little trickier. But if it's a large amount, then you can still pursue it in court and get that money plus any damages if there are any damages. So not turning in earnest money, I used to, for a long time, operate under the impression that if you don't bring earnest money, we're just not under contract. But it is a breach. You are under contract when it's executed. It is just a breach of that contract. You're breaching a term. The buyer's breaching that term. Who doesn't move it pending until they receive the earnest money? Does anyone do that? Does anyone practice that? That is a violation to do that, so don't do that. You are under contract when buyer and seller sign the contract. And you go pending, you have 48 hours according to the MLS code and rules to move it pending in the MLS, otherwise you're in violation of MLS code and rules. So it might take the buyer 3 days to get it there. If you wait 3 days, now you're violating MLS rules. So if I'm a buyer agent and you haven't moved it pending and I'm frustrated, I could tell you that. But whenever the buyer and the seller sign, you're under contract. Earnest money is just a term that has to be fulfilled. It doesn't consummate the contract. It's a term within the contract that has to be fulfilled. Does that make sense? You're under contract when buyer and seller sign. Move it pending at that point. There's also most realtors probably don't just read the contract all the time. So we do a lot of things in practice that when you read it, you're like, wait a minute. And you kind of have to like, is that right? So if someone has questions or a standard of practice or a rule of thumb that seems different, let's talk about it. Because you're probably not the only one who is operating under that rule of thumb or that standard. Because we do operate a lot of standards of practice that are outside of what is legally required or states. So make sure we understand that. And it's all fine until something goes wrong. And it's all fine until someone misses something and then earnest money's now in play. And you didn't do that thing because no one ever does that, right? But now we're in trouble because of that. So if you have questions or if there's any standards that don't make sense, let's talk about it. Okay, earnest money. 3 days. If it falls on a holiday, you have an extra day to the next open available day, and you are breaching if you don't submit it within 3 days. Does that make sense?
So, just to make sure, the first day of those 3 days is the day after it's under contract.
Yeah. Next day is day 1.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it says that anywhere, but within 3 days.
I thought it used time reference.
Says the time reference.
Yeah, but time reference is separate than.
It's highlighted. So it'd be the third day after the last day of signature.
Are you reading time reference? Yeah, I don't think time reference references it. Yeah, because this operates off the execution, not the time reference.
That's how we get it start coming, right?
The next day. Yeah. The day after is usually day 1. That's how it outlines it here. So it's reasonable to assume the same rule applies to the first paragraph, to paragraph 2.
I do have a question on
Yeah.
that. So you're under contract, you got it signed, we know earnest money's coming, but the buyer's agent calls and says, hey, they cannot get that money moved out of their, whatever account until so-and-so, da-da-da-da. What do we do?
Technically, you should probably do an addendum that says earnest money will be delivered. Yeah, but you can just say okay, and as long as we're on the same page.
Sure.
I think if you don't do paperwork, it just puts the person breaching in trouble or in hot water. Because there are times when we like talk about it, but we don't do the paperwork, and the person who technically breaches still breaches, even though we verbally, because if it was verbal, it didn't happen, right? If you've heard that before. If it's not in writing, it wasn't said, it didn't happen. So if you're the buyer, I would say, let's get it in writing that I can't move it until that time. Or in the additional provisions, just adjust it. Earnest money to be delivered on X date, or if you know it's gonna be a problem. But yeah, if you can't get it there, the buyer is breaching and the seller has to allow that. They probably will because they want to accept your offer, but let's do it in
I
writing.
just want to make sure, because I've never written anything on that, and I've done it many times, and you said, let's ask if that's a
Yes.
standard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really need to get it, that's why I was asking.
Yeah. So you never written anything, what do you mean? Oh, you've never made any changes?
No,
Yeah.
yeah, which has been a verbal thing, yeah, oh,
Yeah.
that's fine, just wait, and you know, it's gonna be the next day or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, standard of practice, if there's communication with the other side and everyone's on the same page, it's great. The problem is when communication breaks down and when buyer and seller get upset or they can't agree, then we start looking for, what can we point at to say you're wrong, I'm right. You don't want to give them any ammo. So anything, I'm the same way. Less paperwork, the better, in my opinion. But as I've managed larger and larger groups of agents, more paperwork is better when it comes down to the individual transaction. Make sure everything's in writing and everyone's on the same page. Okay, earnest money. So time reference period. So this is another spot. It happens so often, and you get in your head, especially when periods are coming up. You're like, oh, did I do the math right on this? And a lot of people have questions on this. Happens all the time. So the time reference date is the date that triggers everything else in the contract. When that starts, all the other timelines start. So I personally leave it blank because that gives us time to negotiate. The downside, some people put dates, and they'll put like 1 day or 2 day or 3 days in the future. If we negotiate for 1 or 2 or 3 days, you're cutting yourself pretty short when it comes to getting stuff scheduled out. And so I always leave it blank because it defaults to, if left blank, shall be on the 3rd day after the last date of signatures. So I always like to leave it blank because it gives us negotiating time. Doesn't always take 3 days to negotiate a contract, but it certainly can, especially as we get into a market where we're not making good offers and sellers and buyers are having to actually negotiate and go back and forth. It can take, I've negotiated for 2 weeks before on a contract. So, because if you put 3 days from now, it takes you 4 days to negotiate. Your time reference period started a day before you went under contract, and now you're losing.
Isn't it the date, the signatures of all the parties? So
If it's left blank,
if a seller hasn't signed and agreed to the contract, then it shouldn't start regardless.
it wouldn't start, but that's when all your rest of your time periods would kick off of, in my understanding. I don't think, if this is in the past, I think the rest of the time periods still go off this, even though it wasn't signed yet. That's my opinion.
Oh, okay. But if you leave it blank, it doesn't
It-
start until
correct.
3 days after everyone
Correct.
has signed.
That's why I always,
Ever counter and counter.
yes,
and counter and counter
correct.
and counter.
Yep, yes, correct. That's why I always leave it blank, because it floats. It's a floating date. That's why and that's probably why they left it as, if you leave it blank, if you just default it to 3 days. Yeah. And you can write 3 days after signatures. You can write that too, but it defaults. Yeah, it's there. So, and when we get to the contingency part, I actually put a different term in here too. I always say 3 days after contingency is removed if we're writing a contingency, which is, again, it's a floating date that we don't have to hit. So I always like to leave it blank just because it floats and then it gives us flexibility. So again, the day after is day one, right? So that's kind of the standard that the contract is setting. The day after the period becomes day one, and then you have 3 days after that is when it starts. Calendar, everything is calendar. Everything we talk about is calendar days unless otherwise stated. Like the Ernest said, if it falls on Saturday, Sunday, then you give it. So everything is calendar unless otherwise stated. So a lot of these things is if we miss a timeline or breach and you don't call the other party out on it, I don't know what the law would say if we went in front of a judge, but there's an implied cooperation there Well, you can't go back and say, hey, you missed this timeline 2 weeks ago. Even though I continued the contract, you missed it 2 weeks ago, so I'm going to say you breached. There's a little bit of an implied addendum, a little bit, where we're continuing to cooperate. So if someone breaches and you want to call them on the breach, you need to formally, in paper, on writing, call them on the breach. And there's a document called the seller's notice to, it's called the notice to cancel, and there's a buyer's section of it and a seller's section of it. So if someone misses a timeline and you want to call them on it, or threaten to call them on it, you can still move forward, but this is the document you would use. It's the notice of cancellation. So if they miss their earnest money, we're going to check the top box. Seller is canceling the contract in accordance with paragraph 2 because you did not get the earnest money, and now I'm going to pursue my remedies under paragraph 16.
I think that's why some people might think that they can wait to put it pending, because if they get a better offer after you're technically under contract and they fail to, the current buyer fails to deliver earnest money, they can start negotiating the other one by canceling this one.
Yes, but will they?
You know what I mean?
They can start. Yeah, but again, I think if that happens outside of 2 days, you're in violation of MLS rules, or you can get, hit the police button and turn someone in. If someone's really trying to, backdoor deal you out of a contract, I would start pressing on them hard.
I'm not thinking about right now, but I'm thinking more of like COVID time.
Yeah, when there's multiple offers. Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. But I think the existence of this box on the notice of cancel proves that you are under contract at signature. And here's your ability to cancel if they breach. This is a term that's breachable, not the final thing required to go under contract. So this is, if they don't deliver it, this is what you send them to in breach. And as soon as you send this, if it is after the time and you send this, the buyer doesn't have to sign it. The contract's just canceled. It's done. A cancellation only needs one signature. If you've breached it, it needs one signature of the canceling party, and the contract is canceled. Now then the buyer can say that's not right and sue you to maintain the contract, but the contract is then canceled. So the notice of cancel is how we call someone out on a breach. You can't just allow it to happen until you don't want to go forward any longer and then call them out later. It needs to be called out at the time. Okay, so the time reference date triggers all the other timelines. The first timeline that is triggered is your investigations, inspections, and reviews. So paragraph 7, section A, buyer shall have X days, 10 days if left blank, after the time reference date to complete any investigations, inspections, and reviews. Here I don't leave it blank. I like to put 15 days here. I rarely ever take the full time, but if I have an inspector out and then they say you need a roofer or a foundation or plumbing, it gives me extra days to get the next guy out so that I don't have to do an extension. This is an on or before. I can send my TRR at any time in that 15 days, but I don't want to have to ask for an extension. Let's just say 15. I'll probably have it to you in 8, but I just want this extra time. So I always like to put 15. You can leave it blank. You can put 10. You can put 3. You can put 8. You can put whatever you want. But if you're in the peak time, if we're in May, June, July, an inspector might not be able to get out for like 5 days. And then if it's July, your heating and air guy probably can't get out for a week because everyone's AC is going out. So you just want to make sure you build in time, because the seller does not have to give you more time. If you want to extend the inspection period, it behooves them to, but they don't have to. Everything is a they can press you on that. So I like to put 15. I rarely take that long, but I like to if I can. So this is how many days you have to get your inspections done.
You're right on that one. So
On this one?
inspection, TRD days, number 1 is the day after, so 1, 2, 3.
Mhm.
And then number 1, number 10, or 15 would be day 4, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's where, like on this one, after I go through this one, a 10-day inspection period is actually 14 days. When you count it out, because then there's a 24 hours to submit as well. So it really gives you more time. If a 10-day is that. So a 15 actually turns into an 18 or 19-day inspection period. Okay, so the next section, this is once we've done our inspections, the timeline's required to submit and negotiate our TRR. So buyer or buyer's broker, if applicable, within 24 hours after the expiration of the time reference period. So there's 3 days before the time reference period starts, then your time reference period, then there's 24 hours, and that's when it's due. So again, if I just put 10 days, I've got 3 days before it starts, 10 days of it, 1 day after, 14-day timeline. So at the end of that 14th, whatever that is, 24 hours is not a day though. 24 hours is, normally everything's at midnight, but that is 24 hours. So it's a 14-day period if you put 10. Does that make sense? You have that timeline. So within 24 hours after the expiration, you must submit submit a copy of all written reports obtained by the buyer. So if you did an inspection, if you did a foundation, if you did an HVAC, anything at all that you have in writing, you are required to provide to the seller. Any inspection you have with your TRR normally is how I submit it. But you are required to any written reports that you obtained, you are required to provide them.
Is it for the items that you're asking or just anything?
Any written reports.
You didn't ask for
Yep.
or whatever.
All written reports obtained by buyer.
Okay.
Yeah. If any pertaining to the property. So.
And a text message is not a written.
Yeah, I would think it would be a written up report, not an email, not a text, not a whatever. I mean, normally if we're trying to negotiate, written reports help you, especially if it's a disclosable item. You want them to have knowledge of that so that the next buyer will have to be aware of it because they have to redisclose it if they aren't aware of it, and that helps your negotiating power if they know the next person's going to also ask for it. So, but we do have to submit inspection reports and any written reports.
So let me ask you something, we don't have to get permission then, we just have to,
Correct.
so I would just, if I said you have to get permission.
So the seller has to get permission before they share it with anyone, but contractually you're obligated to share their reports, the buyer is. But we've had instances where a seller has a report, a foundation report, whatever, and they want to give it to the next buyer because the last one busted. Well, that buyer paid for it. It's not the sellers to distribute, it's the buyers. So we've had a seller ask an old buyer if they can share the report with the new buyer, and sometimes the buyer's like, pay me for it. It cost me $350 and I busted the deal, I want my money back. And so that happens, sellers can do it. But yeah, you're contractually obligated to share it from your buyer, but sellers cannot redistribute it. They probably do.
Who's gonna hold the seller accountable?
Yeah.
No one. Yeah,
If the seller's made aware of problems with their own house, why would they not disclose it to the following buyer?
because they don't want to, but they're supposed to. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the purpose of giving it is, hey, you know these things now. I'm telling you about these things. And that's where you can get another person's opinion and the other person says it's fine. It's like, well, I don't have to disclose it. It's a difference of opinion and it hadn't caused me any problems. So,
Well,
but if
the
it's,
seller already knows what's on the report, so
right.
if they had a second report, it could come up with something completely different.
Yep.
that
Yeah.
they weren't
Yeah.
expecting.
It's a gamble for sure. Yeah. So, but
So do you have to sell or you have to send?
yeah. So this is even before. So then you have two options. After you're required to submit it, you can either cancel or do a TRR. So this is regardless of what you decide to do.
I feel like I had this conversation, I had the seller.
Yeah.
And the buyer.
Didn't wanna give it-
canceled, But then I was also fine.
Oh.
Because I was like, you know what?
Yeah. The obligation.
I don't have to disclose.
Yeah, the obligation is not on the seller to collect it. It's on the buyer.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to, pursue it.
It's on the inspection report, but then don't send it to me.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. La 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 la. So, buyer.
You as my alter ego.
Yeah, exactly. We've all got one of those. So buyer is obligated. So at 24 hours after the expiration, we submit all of our reports and select one of the following. Either A, submit a notice of cancellation, or B, submit a TRR. So after 24 hours of the expiration of the time reference period, we can either send a cancellation or a TRR. That's the time limit. You can do it at any point during the inspection period. You can do it after you walk through it on day 2. But you have until 24 hours after the expiration of the time reference period to either submit a cancellation or submit a TRR. Those are your two options. If we do a TRR, then the buyer and seller have X days to negotiate the TRR. 7 days if left blank. I always leave it blank. 7 days is a pretty reasonable time. The one thing they modified this in 24, 25, I can't remember when they added this. Now, if this period expires, earnest money automatically goes back to the buyer. If we cannot, that's on here, right? Yeah. If a written agreement is not reached within time specified in this provision, so 7 days, buyer and seller authorize the holder of the earnest money without further written consent, because there is a release of earnest money document that title companies need to have before they release it. So without any further written consent, authorize them to release the earnest money to the buyer. So if we just can't figure it out, it goes back to the buyer. Now this can be weaponized by both sides. I've had a seller, who was it? Anyone in here? There was another offer they wanted to take, and so they were just gonna sit on the TRR for 7 days. Because sellers can't get out of contracts. Buyers have outs, sellers don't have many outs. So they just wanted to sit on it for 7 days, it would expire, and then contract's over, buyer gets the earnest, I can move on to this other buyer. So it can be weaponized by either side. The only way the buyer could combat that is by just sending another notification saying, okay, I'll take it as is. And then the seller would be forced to sell it to them. But the seller can sit on that. The buyer can sit on it. If they want out, say something unreasonable, go back and forth, just wait the clock out. Contract expires. So no one can hold anyone hostage in the contract. You used to be able to hold someone hostage in the contract until they both agreed they didn't want to sell it to each other or buy it. But now it auto expires and defaults the money back to the buyer. Does that section make sense?
So right there, let's say that the buyer's agent sent it on Wednesday. Buyer's agent client signed it on Wednesday, but the buyer agent didn't send it on Friday. 7 days from Friday.
Should be from the receipt normally. Delivered, yeah. After the buyer or buyer's broker delivered the complete TRR. So even though it was signed 2 days ago, whenever it's delivered is when it would trigger. Yeah, because you can't sit on it for 6.5 days. Then you got 4 hours to figure it out. It would be delivered. Yeah, most things are going to be delivered. Again, the very first page of the contract mentions time is of the essence. I think you could be in breach if you are not operating in good faith. You can be violating ethical rules, realtor rules, if you're not operating in good faith and you're violating that time is of the essence. So it happens, maybe. It might. I've received something and sent it the next day because I was busy, but any more than that, I think is probably not okay. Inexcusable. If you can't do it, hire someone that can do it with a TC or do something. So, but yeah. So within 24 hours of the expiration, we submit reports and either cancel or TRR. Then we have 7 days. If we can't get it done, money automatically goes back to the buyer. If we do get it done, we have until closing to make the repairs. Questions on this? So the biggest thing I talk a lot about is the time period. Again, so we've got, I had AI draw me up a good little timeline, and I can't show it because it's, so this is the idea. So the TRD is the third day after last signature, so that's 3 days. So say we went under contract today on the 13th. Plus 3 days is the 16th. So my inspection period starts on the 16th, or I'm sorry, inspection day starts on the 17th. Day one is the 17th. I have 10 days, and then I have one more day, so the 27th. So if I went under contract today, and I did myself a 10-day inspection period, I have to have a TRR submitted by end of day on the 27th. So it's 3 days, 10 days, 1 day, 27th. So that kind of makes sense. A lot of people argue over when this day starts. That's where a lot of people get, not argue, I mean there is a right answer, but people get confused. All right, back to the presentation.
I think that is confusing. Can you go back to that?
Yes. Let me.
So I guess I thought it would be on the 28th with the TRR would be due.
So let me pull up a calendar. I always like to look at a calendar. That makes it easier for me. And I like to look at it like this too, the month view. So if it was 13th, day one of the 3 days, so 1, 2, 3. Day one of the inspection, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 24 hours, 27th. Does that make sense? Is that? I don't know if that's big enough for everyone to see.
27th is the 10th day, is it not? If the 17th is the first day?
No.
Inspection period?
Yeah. Wait. It's 4. Yeah, it's 4.
14 days from.
Yeah, it's 14 days. Yeah. But it's not just 14.
Just put 2 weeks on it.
Yeah, it's not just 14 days. It's 3, 10, 1, or 3, 15, 1. Whatever your inspection period is. But each time it starts the day after. So if last signature's on the 13th, day 1, 2, 3. 10 days starts on so it's day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's on the 26th, and then the next day is 27th. Yeah, because
I always think about it. Somebody else has already figured it out. It's 2 weeks.
if you do 10 days, it's 2 weeks. Yeah,
There's no sense to kind of reinvent anything.
Thank you for that clarification.
yeah,
sir.
yeah. But if you're, no. But that's why, again, I think there a lot of times, especially if you're running out of time, you're like double and triple and quadruple checking to make sure I'm not missing timelines. And so that's where people get confused and they start second guessing. And then if there's some agent on the other side, I learned this when I was brand new, most agents don't know what they're talking about. But it's one of those things where they are,
That is correct.
they're, what's it called, rarely right, but never in doubt. And so it's like, they're going to tell you, it was due yesterday, it was due yet. And you're like, oh, God, crap, was it? And like, no, I'm pretty sure it's tomorrow. And like, it was yesterday. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure. And then I have to do that little exercise with them. And then they're like, oh, let me talk to my broker.
If you don't put your time frames on your contracts and your calendar, you're missing out.
Yeah, absolutely. Your dates should be on your calendar, especially if you're doing multiple at a time. Things get lost. Because I've been in a scenario where I'm negotiating multiple TRRs at a time. One's really complicated, one's a little easier. I forget about one, I'm concentrating on the other, and you run out of days and time. So everything should be on your calendar for sure. All right. Okay, inspection. So we did TRRs. Expiration of buyer's right to cancel. So let me go back to the TRR period real quick. I think this is important. I've seen a few people get in trouble on this. So who's ever heard the statement that a buyer can get out for any reason during the inspection period? Who's heard that? I know more people have heard that than 2 people. Okay, that is not accurate. There are specific reasons you can get out of the contract. Now you can categorize certain things into certain things, but you cannot tell the other realtor, my buyers don't want the house anymore. Or my buyers found another house. That is not an acceptable way. Now I've had an agent heard that before. You can get out for whatever reason. So they just leveled with the other agent. Hey agent, I'm sorry, they found this other house, so we're going to back out. Because you can get out for any reason. Yeah, you can if you do the paperwork properly. But if you tell me that they're just breaching contract, I'm not going to let you out of this contract. And so the realtor screwed that up, and the realtor ended up paying the earnest money back to the buyer.
Can't get out for spite.
Can't get out for fun or for spite or because you second guess. Come up with a reason that's allowable. So in that instance, yeah, you can be creative with why you're getting out of it, but you cannot get out for any reason. Do not tell the seller that. Do not tell the seller there's another offer or you're doing anything. Do not tell anything that. There is a notice of cancellation. If you want to know the reasons that are allowable, oh man, it's going to take too long to pull up, never mind. There is a notice of cancellation. There's a buyer section of the notice of cancellation that lists all the reasons you can get out of a contract. So if you want out and it's during the inspection period, you can't just say we want out. Find one of those reasons that most closely represents why they want out and then check that box. But do not tell the other realtor they don't want the house anymore. Do not tell the other realtor they found another house. None of that. But because a lot of people, you can get out if you don't like the paint color. You just can't say it to the other realtor. Because even though that's technically an inspection and whatever, there are certain things that you cannot tell the other realtor. So, can you get out during the inspection period? Yes, I tell my clients that. We can get out for any reason. I don't tell the other realtor why we're getting out unless it's a real financing, inspections, stuff like that. So I want to make sure we've had multiple agents getting some hot water with that recently. All right, buyer's expiration to cancel. So when you're at a certain point, you run out of time to cancel the contract. The finance addendum is really the only thing that goes all the way to closing. If for whatever reason your finance falls through, that is a reason you can get out all the way up to close date. But without the finance addendum, and I put this in red because if you don't follow this, you agree to take the property as is. The seller can do no repairs and you still have to buy it if you don't hit this timeline. So failure to complete one of the following in the time periods and investigations reviews paragraph. So by the time the time reference period is over, you either have to, if you didn't do any inspections, you agree to take it as is. If you don't deliver a TRR, you agree to take it as is, or cancel a contract, you agree to take it as is. So if the time reference period expires and the 24 hours expires and you do not submit a TRR or a cancellation, your buyer is obligated to take it as is at that point. They have canceled, their right to cancel has expired. Does that make sense? Now, what I encourage all agents to do, if you're a listing agent, is do not play gotcha with TRR timelines. A terrible strategy. It will only blow up. All it does is create it blows up. Everyone's pissed at everyone now. If you see a timeline coming up, send a message to the agent. Hey, can I expect your TRR in the next day or two? You don't have to tell them how to do their job, but nudge them. No one likes to be told how to do their job, but I want to make sure we're communicating. Hey, sellers are getting a little antsy. When can we expect your TRR?
Well, do you think it really is in the seller's best interest to ask for the repairs?
Yeah, because the goal is to sell the house, not take their earnest money. Because what will happen is you got to take it as is, and they're like, I'm not doing that. The HVAC's busted. The what blah blah blah. I'll just give you my $2,000. I'm not buying.
But it does give you a little bit of a leg up.
It gives you leverage. I think you lose goodwill, and I think it flirts with negotiating in bad faith. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong to do, but I would rather. The goal is to sell a house and have a happy seller and a happy buyer and sell a house. It gives you leverage, 100%. It gives you leverage. It normally, in a negotiation, there's several things that have to happen to be a successful negotiation. I don't think that behooves the contract, if that makes sense in general. Most of the time when that happens, it busts. And then we start fighting over earnest, and then we start telling agents who has to cough up the money because someone messed up and didn't communicate. And it's normally the buyer's agent, but it's just rarely is it, in my opinion, if the goal is to sell the house, is it the best option. I would always rather negotiate and get it done. Because again, what you're going to be left with is a house that busted now. Now we've got a house that's back on the market, and we can say at no fault of the seller, but that always is a lie, And so no one believes that. Yeah, it's like so you can. I don't think it's bad or wrong. I just think I would rather get a TRR, negotiate it, and sell the house. If your goal is to catch them and still negotiate, but to say, no, I'm not doing anything because your realtor missed this timeline, I think that kills the deal. Unless the house is in good shape and they're going to take it anyway. But if the goal is to catch them and then do nothing, I don't think it's going to go well normally. Have you done that and had it succeeded? And did your seller negotiate? Or do they just say no?
It depends, but like on a house, like you said, on a house that didn't have a whole lot.
Yeah, they just took it.
The buyer's agent, well, we talked about
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah.
The buyer's agent sent a text message about what
Oh.
they were wanting.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't work. Please send your I asked.
Oh yeah. In that instance, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you did your job.
It's like, well, sorry,
Yeah.
dude, no, we're 2 days past the date. No,
Yeah.
we're not doing anything and there's nothing wrong with the house. So
Yeah.
have that conversation with your client because I'm not your bait.
And I think if that's an instance where there's nothing material wrong with the house, there's no heating and air problems, electrical problems, roof, foundation, whatever, and they're wanting like door handles to be fixed and unbalanced fans or whatever, yeah, I think that's probably fine, because you would have said no to those anyway. But what I would not advise is, if you're keeping an eye on the date and you know it's coming up and they're not saying anything, you guys were talking about it days before, I wouldn't just be quiet. That's my advice. Again, I think it does give your seller leverage, but I think if you tell your seller that, hey, they violate or they missed this timeline, now we don't have to do anything. Well, now the seller's like, well, I don't want to do it. It creates an unhealthy negotiating environment, in my opinion. So I would not play gotcha with any timelines. Again, our job is to communicate, and if the other agent's struggling or missed something, let's communicate. Let's get to the finish line. Let's sell the house. Two things that I didn't know for a long time that are buried here in the contract that are pretty material. If the expiration of the time periods so once the time reference and the investigation period is over, the buyer's inability to obtain a loan based on hazard insurance no longer relieves them from buying the house. So you need to get your insurance approved with your lender prior to your inspection period being over. Now, if it prevents you from getting a loan, you can still lose the loan, but you can make the argument that if your loan's lost due to hazard, you still are obligated to purchase, and you're in breach if you can't. So you have your inspection period to get your insurance policy approved. Something not a lot of people know exists in the contract. The other one, kind of weird, less regular, but after expiration of the investigation period, any square footage calculation of the dwelling, included but not limited to appraisals, surveys that are indicating more or less, shall not relieve the buyer. So if the appraiser comes back and it meets value, but it's like 150, 200 square feet smaller than the MLS, then it doesn't relieve you from your obligation. Now, if it's 200 square feet less and the appraiser the value is not met, that gives you an out through the finance addendum. But if value is met and it's 100 square feet smaller, that's not a reason. After the inspection period is over, you can't back out for that. During the inspection period, you can. Normally, appraisals come back right around the end of the inspection period, so that's kind of a tough thing. But if you can't, after the inspection period, if you can't get insurance, that doesn't relieve you. And after the inspection period, if the square footage is not matched, that does not relieve you. Questions on those two? Not many have. It's a small. It doesn't pop up a lot.
What would you do about the square footage?
Huh?
What would you do about the square footage?
You just bought a house that's smaller. So you have to explain. It's like the seller didn't take 100 of the square feet and remove it from the house. It's the same house you bought. Yeah, nothing. As long as it met value, it's just what sucks is when they go to sell it, it's going to be worth more per foot, and it's going to be harder for them to make their money back because now we know it's less feet. Maybe you get a different measurement. Maybe you just go back to what the county says, and you've lost that appraisal. I don't know what happened to it. So yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff. But Logan had an investor buy a house. It was 1,000 square feet smaller.
Wow.
Which seems wild. How do you not notice 1,000 square feet missing? But it was like 2,500 feet, and it was chalked up with add-ons, and it came back 1,000 square feet shorter, and which is they counted it all. It was just wrong. Really? What they submitted to the county, I guess, at whatever point was wrong from what everything looked right. It was just the measurement was wrong, and so I've not seen that before. Yeah, had an upset. It's hard to wrap your head around, but it happened. Okay, title commitment. So during the title process, the buyer is obligated 10 days to review the title policy. So whenever you get your title commitment back, you have 10 days to review it. If the title commitment comes back less than 10 days before closing, the buyer they have the right to push closing out to allow themselves 10 days to review it. Rarely ever happens. You normally get this in plenty of time. And normally if there's something, you don't need 10 days to review it. It's pretty negotiable, pretty quick. But the buyer is obligated 10 days. So if commitment comes back late, and you're not ready to close yet, you can lean on this to buy yourself 10 more days if you want or need. Title requirements. In the event, I always leave this blank, but it might behoove buyers to put 0 here, or 5 or 10. But what this says is, in the event that there is a cloud on title, the buyer is pre-agreeing to give the seller X days to remedy the clouded title. So if we find a clouded title and they say we can't close for 3 weeks, the buyer can't say, then I want out. The buyer is agreeing to give them 30 days to fix it before I can get out of the contract. Now, it could bump your closing back 30 days, which is frustrating. And if they go to 31 days, then you can get out of the contract. But you are pre-agreeing to give the seller 30 days to fix whatever title issue they have. So again, it might behoove you to put 0 here because you're going to give them time, but I don't know if I want to give them 30 days.
Right.
30 days long. I mean, the market can move a lot in 30 days. Houses can come up and go in 30 days. I can be kicked out of a house in 30 days, whatever it might be. So the contract pre-agrees to 30 days of title remedy time that you have to give the seller. So I leave it blank. It's such a 1% of transactions are going to deal with this, but when it happens, it's like, that's frustrating. But normally they want the house, normally they're willing to wait 30 days. But if it's like a contingency and there's like 4 houses lined up, it can cause problems. So
Vacant land almost always has
has something leaned on it, yeah. So something to consider. So, and I don't know if this is in the vacant land contract or not. I don't know that contract well enough to know if that. I'll bet you it is.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I've always put 0 just because it does say or longer period as agreed upon in writing,
Yeah. Well, you can allow however much you want. Yeah.
but not 30 days.
But at least if you put 0, now the buyer's the one picking the day, not an arbitrary 30-day timeline. The closing, so again, this is on page 1, but it's one of the last slides because it's last in the timeline. Only thing here is closing is on or before. You can close before closing date if you want, but that is the time you have to close by. If you cannot close by that time, you are in breach. If the seller can't for whatever reason, or if the buyer can't for whatever reason, you are in breach. There has to be an extension. And you can close on or before. And if we do an extension, maybe we do it a little longer than we thought because we can close on or before, but it's an on or before date, the closing date is. All right, finance addendum. This is another thing. This is something that doesn't happen in practice, but gets confused a lot when there's weird issues. So on your FHA conventional or VA loan supplement, there is a section that says within 5 days of the TRD, time reference date, you must make a complete application with your lender. You have 5 days to pick a lender and submit a full application. And then you need to pay all the initial loan fees, including appraisal, credit report, etc. Within 5 days, you have to start the loan process. Then, within 10 days, you have to tell your lender to submit a, what do they call it? Conditional loan approval to the listing agent. Who has ever submitted a conditional loan approval to the listing agent? I've sold hundreds of houses and I've never submitted one or received one. I've had one realtor try to say we breached by not doing this, but if you read the next section, you'll see that we did not. So you have 5 days. This is one thing. I know some agents, I found this out, don't order appraisal until the inspections are done. Because it's $550, you want to save the money. If it's going to bust, not allowed. You have 5 days to order the appraisal and submit your contract, submit your application. You have 10 days to submit a conditional loan approval. I talked to Shelby, said he never does it either. He does hundreds of loans a month, never does it.
So can you, once you get into the inspection and there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff, can you ask the lender to pause on the appraisal?
You normally, so the buyer pays it within 5 days and that money's gone. Whether the appraiser comes out and completes the work or not, that money went to the appraiser. Yeah, they don't give it back. So that cost is incurred. Most lenders are going to cover the credit charge normally. They're not going to collect money for that. Some do, I guess, but the appraisers, the $500, $550. If it hasn't been picked up yet, so what lenders do is send it out to an appraisal management service, and then a random appraiser is going to grab it. If it hadn't been picked up yet, you can probably cancel the order. But once it's picked up, I think that money's gone because they can say, "Well, I've already done all this work," and they haven't done anything. But once it's picked up, I think that money's gone. But the idea is, again, I don't know if we're operating in good faith. If you're trying to hold out money before it's like, that's why it's like, I'm locking my house up. I'm a seller. I'm taking it off the market. I'm committing to you. You need to take the steps necessary so that we can meet closing timelines. Because if we don't order appraisal for 10 days, and it takes them a minute to get done, and then there's some appraisal requirement, and now we're pushing timelines real hard. So you have 5 days to submit a final app, pay all your loan fees, and get an appraisal out. Then you have 10 days to submit a conditional loan approval to the seller. So within that 10 days, you either submit the conditional loan approval or give notice to the seller that the terms are unacceptable. So if you look at the cancellation notice, one of the buyer's options is loan terms are unacceptable. In my opinion, you have to use that excuse within the first 10 days of the contract. I don't think you can use that excuse 3 weeks down the road. If the loan terms are unacceptable, we should know within 10 days because your rate's been locked, your fees have been disclosed, we should know these things. So you either submit this or give me a notice of cancellation due to loan terms not being approvable. So here's where it says, here's the out for the buyer, and this is why in practice this doesn't happen. So if within time specified above, written statement of loan approval is not delivered to the seller may provide buyer written notice of intent to cancel and terminate the contract. Upon the seller providing this notice, the upon seller providing the notice to the buyer of the seller's intent to cancel, the contract shall be terminated upon the 4th day. So what happens is if you don't do this, which no one does, then the seller, you don't just breach. Most things, if you don't do it, it's just a breach. Here, the seller has to send you a notice, then you have 4 days to do what they ask you to do. If you don't, then it cancels. So no one does it. And then, so one agent tried to call us on it and said, you breached. It had nothing to do with the financing, but then they went back in time to say you never did this, so you breached. We didn't because they never sent us a notice. So that's the only time they have to give us notice, and then they have to give us 4 days to comply, according to this. But again, it just doesn't, no one ever does it. It's very silly. It makes sense. If I'm a seller, I want to know you're doing your stuff and you're approved. You don't want lender to pop up the week before closing and say not approved. But in practice, this doesn't happen very much, but it's important to understand. So as a listing agent, you can ask all your buyers on day 10 to submit this if you want, or day 13, 3 days after time reference date. So this is on every loan contract. If it has a loan, this exists, so you can do that. Questions on that? Kind of a weird one. All right, I'm going to get through the contingency stuff kind of quick. So this is the seller's notice to cancel. So on the notice to cancel under the seller's section, you can say, as provided in the finance supplement, the seller was not provided with the written notice of loan approval within the time specified. So that's how you cancel if you haven't received that. Then they've got 4 days to respond to that. All right, contingency timelines. There are 2 types of contingencies. The first is a contingency where the buyer's house is not under contract yet, and the other one is a contingency where the buyer's house is under contract, and they have 2 different rules. In one, we call it the not under contract. The document is called sale of buyer's property condition, not under contract. So this means my buyer wants to buy a house. They have a house to sell that we have not got under contract yet. So the timelines don't start during that process. And so this is where in the TRD section on the contract, you can either put something 30 days out if you want, but again, I like it to be floating in my opinion. So I put 3 days after contingency removal, and that way it floats. So whenever I send them a removal of contingency notice, my TRD is triggered. 3 days later, my inspection period starts. Does that make sense? This is how I like to do it. I'm sure you'll find someone that does it different ways. You can just put a date out there, but that's how I like to do it. On the sale of buyer property condition not under contract document, there are 2 statuses of the buyer's property. Either A, the property is now listed with a real estate brokerage firm, or B, the property will be listed within 2 days. So some people go shopping for houses before they've even listed their home. That's been less common in years past because of the urgency in the market. Now that might become more common if there's more options to buy and and sellers have less options to accept. So this says I've had a listing where someone rose an offer and they wanted to list at FSBO. They wanted to buy the house with me and list their home by owner. This does not allow that. We said you need to list it with a real estate agent. So they fought us on it, and they ended up doing it. We said we weren't going to accept the contract because I don't know when your house is going to sell. So this does mention with a real estate brokerage firm.
If those sellers really wanted to do that, you could also.
You could allow it. Yeah, you could just scratch this out and initial it. But I would advise, it's just,
Oh, I would too.
yeah, it's a crapshoot. You don't know.
Technicality,
Yes,
you
yeah.
technically could.
Yeah, everything on this contract can be scratched out, amended, changed, edited, everything, as long as there's 2 initials and signatures on everything. Yeah, so if you don't like one of these terms, you're okay with it, scratch it out, initial it, do whatever. But you can absolutely allow that. And then section 2 is if it's not, by the time we go under contract, you've got 2 days to get it cleaned up, take pictures, and put it on the market. You get 2 days, so get after it. And this is if it's not under contract. So the next thing on the not under contract, the seller buyer's property condition not under contract document, is what's called a kick-out clause. So basically what that means is when it's not under contract, the seller can continue to market the home and accept offers. You have first right of refusal, but they can continue to keep it active on the market, take offers, negotiate offers. If they negotiate an acceptable offer, they can initiate what's called a kick-out clause, which means I'm going to accept the seller offer and I'm going to give you X time to remove your contingency. It defaults no less than 24 hours. So from the time they send you a buyer to remove, seller's demand to remove, there's a document called, is that what it's called? I thought it was notice of demand. No, I got it right here, guys, so we don't even have to wonder. Buyer's removal of condition notification. So this is the buyer's notification. Gosh darn it. I got the wrong document up now. Okay, I don't have it, so we're going to speculate. So there is a document whenever you receive an acceptable offer and you have a not under contract contingency accepted, you can submit the notice demand to remove condition, and then they have X time to remove their condition. It defaults 24 hours. You as the buyer agent could put 48, 72, whatever you want, and that's the minimum they can allow you. It gives yourself more time. And there's 2 ways you can remove your condition, your contingency. You can either get some sort of short-term financing, bridge loan, something like that, or you can sell your house, get it under contract. So when they issue you that demand, you've got 24 hours to remove your condition, or they can take the other offer. Does that make sense? So the kick-out clause.
I have a question. So whenever you've got a property under contract and you're on the buyer's side, I've always been like, hey, let's get the inspections done because we want to. But I know that this is what I'm saying, like, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
It seems like you should never do that, even though it seems like you're operating in good faith, that you're definitely buying this house regardless, but it's like.
Sellers don't care. Yeah. So if it's,
As a listing agent, I would want them to go ahead and get it over with, like.
yeah, they're still going to kick you out.
Yeah.
So the question is, if you get a house under contract and the buyer's not under contract, none of the timelines start. Your inspection period doesn't start. The conditional financing period, none of this stuff starts. None of the timelines start. We're just waiting for my house to go under contract. So what Brittany was saying is, should we start the inspections? Should we get the appraisal? Should we do all these things? And the answer, in my opinion, would be no, because you're going to spend $1,000 at least, and then someone else could come in and buy it out from under you. So in my opinion, I would say no. And I've had clients, agents do that with clients, and they've lost the money. And they've tried to sell the inspection to the new buyer, but that realtor's like, I don't know who that inspector is. I'm going to use the inspector I like. And so I wouldn't spend any money, do anything. All your energy, focus, and money should go on selling your house. Go spruce it up. Don't spend money on inspections. Get the house sold. I was supposed to show you a removal of contingency, but I don't have it. So this is how the seller can demand the removal when they receive another offer, and they can initiate the kickout clause. When the buyer's house is not under contract. So when the buyer's house is not under contract, they can continue to market it on the MLS, do open houses, they can do price drops, they can do whatever they want to sell the house. They can continue to do that.
Sorry, do they have to write something in the notice that they are under contract?
A lot of agents, so there's a conditions affecting sale button in the MLS. So that's where if it's like a REO, foreclosure, short sale, probate, stuff like that, these are conditions that affect the sale of the home. So there's something called kickout. Is it called kickout clause? What's it termed? Or contingency? Is it called kickout clause? So there's something in there that indicates that. And then you can put it in the realtor remarks, contingency offer accepted. You can put it in the public remarks. I don't know if I would. But normally if you're the listing agent, you would want to indicate to all future realtors that we've got an offer accepted. It's contingent. I think it creates some urgency for their buyer to make a good, strong offer, because we have to kick out this other one. We're competing with someone else. So I would you want to update the conditions affecting sale and probably put it in the realtor remarks.
And the other offer that they may take, they can't take something else that's also contingent.
Correct. They can take something lower. They can take something that's worse offer if it's not contingent. And even if it's contingent under contract, I believe they can accept that because there are no other contingencies on it. Timelines can move forward.
If it's contingent under contract, they can take that one instead.
That's my understanding.
Where would that be into any of the documents?
Like what you can accept.
There, I think on that first sentence under the number 4 bolded. If the seller receives a desire to accept a valid bona fide offer,
To a third party.
subject to no conditions
Other than inspection, title, survey, mortgage inspection, financing, sale agreement,
backup.
closing, or backup,
Currently under
Sell
contract.
or sale agreement. Yeah. Subject to the backup properties currently under contract condition. Or a sale agreement, subject to the. Yeah. So that includes people who have conditions under currently under contract. So you can accept currently under contract offers.
You can't accept not under contract.
You cannot accept not under contract offers, even if it's more.
Now, like my brain's confused.
Okay.
So let's say you are under contract and your buyer's property is also under contract, can they still take you out?
No.
Okay, I thought.
So that's what I'm about to show. Yeah.
I didn't think that was.
So this is only not under contract. This just shows you what they can accept someone who is presently under contract.
You
Yeah.
wouldn't want to show that house if your buyer's not under contract. If your buyer has a house to sell, you wouldn't want to show that to them. 'Cause they
Correct.
can't even put an
They
offer
can't even put an offer in. Correct. Yeah, correct. Which is why you kind of want to indicate it in the MLS somewhere. You have to, but then in the realtor remarks, you want it to be clear of that. So the other contingency is a presently under contract contingency. This one's much shorter. It basically just gives you an out of the contract if your contract doesn't close. But everything else is like a normal contract. It moves forward. All the timelines move forward. So notwithstanding the above condition, buyer shall immediately apply for financing as set out in the finance supplement, and buyer shall immediately exercise buyer's right inspections set out in the inspections. So basically, the other one doesn't state, the not under contract doesn't state timeline start. This does state you need to start your timelines. This also requires sellers to move it pending in the MLS. They can no longer show it. They can no longer accept other offers once you're under contract. Once yours is under contract. So yeah, they can't kick you out. They can't show the house. They can't keep it active, open houses, none of that. Once yours is under contract. Does that make sense?
And you have to remove your condition in order to tell them that you're under contract.
Yeah, so when you go from a not under contract to an under contract, there is a removal of condition. There's two things you need to do. And then submit the other one, yeah. So there's a buyer's removal of condition. So you can either remove it when your property sells, you can remove it when you have gone under contract, or when you've got a financing for a bridge loan. So I've either got a contract, I've got the ability to buy it without selling my home, or I've sold my home. These are the three reasons you would remove the contingency. When you send the buyer's removal of contingent notice, you also want to send a contingency presently under contract notice. You want to send both, because that still gives you the ability to back out when the contract sells. I think it mentions it here. Other inspections. Subject to no conditions. Yeah, so it still creates a condition.
When you have to addend the contract, if you change to the supplement, nothing else?
Yeah, on page 1. No, you just like uncheck that box, you mean?
Well, you're basically saying you would uncheck the box and then check the box for the second? You're saying?
Yeah.
Or does that just remove the condition from the first, not under contract?
I don't know if you would need to amend the check boxes. Because all that does is notify people of what's attached. So it's technically attached still. It's this overrides it.
Isn't this considered technically to be a contract amendment?
Say that again.
Isn't this document considered to be a contract addendum anyways?
Yeah. So
this
this is,
changing the original contract then.
yeah, it should do it. Yeah, you're just talking about what's attached. So, but this I think still creates the condition of the closing of the buyer's property. So I would still probably send a presently under contract addendum, but I think this still gives you out if your contract doesn't sell, or if your house doesn't sell for whatever reason. But I would still send the presently under contract addendum with it. Does that make sense? When you remove the not under contract, send an under contract contingency, because it's still contingent on the sale of the home. Is that my last slide? Nope, one more. What is it? Oh yeah, the demands. So the two documents to remove the contingency are, so not under contract, so there's the seller's demand. So this is, it's just a duplicate slide, it's the same thing. So this is your kick-out clause and the seller's demand. So this is the seller's demand puts a time date on when you can, on when the contingency removal is needed by, so they can accept the next offer. So on the seller's demand removal of demand, that's what it's called, seller's conditional remover demand notification. That document says you have until X date at X time to remove your condition, otherwise we're going to accept the next offer. So that's how you demand. It's not just an email that says, hey, we got an offer, you have 24 hours. There's a document that demands it, and that's when it goes off of. So we had an agent argue that the email did not start the timeline. You were supposed to send me this document, and they were trying to buy more time. And I think that I would probably agree with them that the document is what triggers it, not an email. Because this has seller signatures, the email doesn't. So the contingency process is a little trickier to navigate. There's some more moving parts, but essentially what you need to know is if it's not under contract, the seller can continue to market it and they can kick you out, and you do not want to start your inspection and finance timelines. Once you get your buyer's house under contract, then the sellers move it pending, you start all your timelines and you move forward. It's still contingent upon you successfully selling your house though. So if your contract busts, you can get out of the purchase. If your sale busts, you can get out of the purchase. Does that make sense?
Because you can't finance it.
It's not financeable, but also it's contingent upon the successful sale.
So almost everything that we do is like that. So,
Yeah, financing is pretty an umbrella.
Yeah.
If I lose my job, can't get financing. If I go buy a car, I can't get financing. Whatever it is, financing's pretty all encompassing. Go buy a car. Go buy Go put a washing machine on credit, and that'll.
The other day we were talking about a bridge loan versus,
Line of credit.
what, was that what it was? that
Yeah.
You and Tim were talking about? I forget what it was.
Yeah, line of credit. So we had someone who needed to sell a home before they could buy a home. And a lot of people talk about a bridge loan, which is just kind of an unsecured loan for your down payment so you can buy a home and kind of make your 2 payments. If your seller has equity, which don't know, depending on how long they've owned it or whatever, a line of credit is going to be better than a bridge loan. And a line of credit is going to be cheaper to obtain. The interest rate will be about the same, but you can get it within like 14 days normally, and you only are charged on what you extend from the line of credit. So if you have 50 grand in equity and you only need 20 grand for your down payment or whatever, you can get your line of credit on your existing home, as long as you have to financially qualify for both, correct? But if if their payments, they qualify on payment, but maybe I don't have the 50 grand down payment I need or whatever, you can get a line of credit. So Tim had a client that had a bunch of equity and just took a line of credit against the equity for the down payment, bought the home, and it's easier and cheaper and faster than a bridge loan. So bridge loan, again, it's kind of an unsecured loan to bridge the gap between your two homes, but it's short-term, interest only, 6 to 12 months, just not a great loan. Versus a line of credit, secured on your existing equity, so whenever you sell it, you pay it off anyway, there's less fees and it's quicker. Yeah. So if you have equity, a line of credit could be a good option. But again, you have to qualify for the payments and talk to your lender to make sure that line of credit doesn't screw up your permanent financing as well. But as long as it's to the transaction, I don't think it will. It's normally whenever you go to different industries to get credit is when the mortgage bank doesn't like it. If I go fill out a car application, then go to Best Buy and fill out an application for a Best Buy credit card, that's when they start to get a little spooked. So, questions on timelines or contracts?
I do have one.
Yeah.
So, I have a buyer who's done the TRR, and we can't get the seller to sign it. How long does the seller have to sign it?
7 days from the time you deliver it. If they don't, then the contract just is over. They're not.
They have to do an extension, or it would be over.
Yeah, you can extend the negotiation period.
Yeah. They need
Are they
more time.
Oh, they need more. Okay, so they're not just dragging.
No, they just needed more time to supposedly get,
I would extend it.
yeah.
So that's a perfect example of like, we don't need to do the paperwork. We can just keep talking.
Yeah.
But then the seller could just change their mind one day and be like, nah, we're out of contract. Put it back on the market.
Yeah.
Keep your earnest money. I'm going back on the market.
Yeah.
So when you extend it, you at least lock them into a negotiation for a time period. So I would extend it. But again, if they don't sign your extension and timeline expires,
Yeah.
timeline expires. Yeah. That means they're not operating it. They're not trying to sell the home to you.
Yeah.
They're doing something else. But yes, I would do paperwork. Especially when we're talking about extending timelines, always do an addendum. Don't ever just negotiate it with the other agent and give yourself time, because it's just bad. Because most agents do that and don't explain the implications to the client.
Right.
And the client's like, why did we give him extra time?
Yeah.
Yeah, do paperwork. What do we think? All right.